Close your eyes for a second. Now imagine this. You're standing barefoot on the dry grass of East Africa. No shoes, no map, no phone, no idea what's 50 miles away, let alone 5,000. There's no word yet for ocean, no word for mountain range because you've never seen one. Everything you know is the horizon in front of you, and everything beyond it is a total blank. Now here's the part that should stop you cold. Somehow, starting from that one small patch of African land, humans ended up everywhere, shivering in Siberian snow, sailing to islands they couldn't even see from shore, standing on the ice at the edge of Antarctica, in the deserts of Australia, on the peaks of the Andes. No engines, no compasses, no satellites, just legs, willpower, and time. So how does a species with no vehicles, no writing, and no idea the rest of the world even exists, manage to walk, wade, and sail its way onto every single continent on Earth? The answer starts with one unremarkable stretch of land in Africa. Every person alive today, every race, every nationality, every culture traces back to the same origin point. Roughly 300,000 years ago, in a landscape of grasslands and river valleys, a new kind of primate started standing a little straighter, thinking a little sharper, and cooperating a little better than anything before it. That primate was us, Homo sapiens. For tens of thousands of years, that's where we stayed. Africa was home, and it was plenty big enough. So why did anyone ever leave? The answer isn't some grand plan to explore the world. It's much more desperate than that. Nobody woke up one morning and decided to populate 7 continents. Migration wasn't a decision, it was a side effect of survival. Picture a small group of hunter-gatherers. The rains stop coming. The herds they depend on wander off toward greener land. What do? You follow, not because you're brave, but because the alternative is starving in place. Multiply that by thousands of generations, and entire populations drift almost accidentally across the planet, one valley at a time. Nobody was migrating continents. They were just walking to where the food was, until one day their descendants were living somewhere their ancestors had never even heard of. And the challenges only got bigger from there. Dense rainforests in Southeast Asia were disorienting mazes of vines, insects, and unfamiliar predators, where every unknown plant was a gamble between food and poison. Deserts like the Arabian Peninsula could swing from scorching heat to freezing cold in a single day, with barely a drop of water in between. Mountain ranges like the Himalayas forced people through thin, freezing air with no ropes, no gear, nothing but lungs adapting on the fly. And rivers, with no bridges and no boats yet, could sweep away an entire family in seconds. Our ancestors crossed these obstacles again and again, over dozens of generations, passing down nothing but memory and word of mouth. And just when it seemed Earth had run out of ways to make travel brutal, something far colder and far bigger appeared. Around 100,000 to 20,000 years ago, the planet entered a series of ice ages. And here's the twist most people don't know. Ice ages didn't just freeze the world, they unlocked it. As ocean water froze into massive ice sheets, sea levels dropped by hundreds of feet, exposing land that had been hidden underwater for ages. One of those strips connected Siberia to Alaska. Today we call it the Bering Land Bridge, but at the time it was just land, grassy and enormous, maybe 600 miles wide. People crossing it may not have even realized they were leaving one continent and entering another. Around 20,000 to 15,000 years ago, small groups followed herds of mammoths and bison straight across it, walking into the Americas without a single boat. The New World wasn't discovered by sailing to it. It was walked into, on a road made of frozen ocean floor. But not every gap could be solved by walking. Even at the lowest ice age sea levels, Australia was never connected to the mainland by land, not once. So how did humans get there roughly 65,000 years ago, tens of thousands of years before they even reached the Americas? The evidence points to something remarkable. They built rafts or boats and crossed open water on purpose. Reaching Australia meant paddling at least 60 to 100 kilometers with no land visible on the other side for much of the journey, no guarantee anything existed at all, and no way to turn back. Groups likely did this multiple times, carrying children and elders, not just brave explorers testing their luck. By 65,000 years ago, humans weren't just wandering wherever the herds led them. They were planning, building, and taking deliberate risks to reach a place they couldn't even prove was there. But surviving the journey was only half the battle. Starvation was constant, since there was no waiting out a bad season with food stored away. Disease was a silent killer, as new environments met new parasites and bacteria with no medicine to fight them. Predators like saber-toothed cats saw slow-moving groups as easy opportunities. And brutal cold in places like Siberia could wipe out an entire group in a single unprepared night. For every successful migration we can trace today, there were almost certainly countless failed ones that simply vanished without a trace. The humans who survived weren't necessarily the strongest, they were the most adaptable, learning new environments fast enough to exploit them before those environments could kill them first. That adaptability reshaped human history entirely. As groups became isolated from each other by oceans, deserts, and mountains for thousands of years, they developed different physical traits, languages, and cultures, all shaped by their surroundings. Skin tone adapted to sunlight, bodies adapted to climate, and entire belief systems formed independently around the world. Every culture and ethnicity alive today exists because our ancestors were forced to wander and adapt in radically different corners of the planet. Scientists can still trace this today, finding shared genetic markers between populations as distant as Siberia and indigenous peoples in the Americas, proof written into our cells of a journey that happened thousands of generations ago. The differences we sometimes treat as dividing lines are really just different chapters of the exact same journey. Think about everything you just heard. A small group of humans in Africa, with nothing but curiosity, hunger, and grit, crossed deserts that could kill in a day, mountains that could steal your breath, and oceans with no visible end. And somehow, generation after generation, they made it to every continent on Earth. You are not separate from that story. You are the result of it. Somewhere in your ancestry, whether you're from Nigeria or Norway, Peru, or the Philippines, there's an unbroken line of people who kept walking when it would have been easier to stop. Every stranger you'll ever pass on the street carries that same impossible inheritance, descended from people who stood at the edge of the known world and just kept going anyway. It never really ended. It just quietly brought us here, to you, standing on a continent your ancestors once had no name for, no map of, and no way of even imagining.